writers, you're listening to the Kobo ReWriting Life Podcast, where we highlight an episode from our backlist that will bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm your host, Tara Kremen, Director of Kobo Writing Life. For this ReWriting Life episode, I'm highlighting an interview with best-selling author Susan Stoker. Susan is such a prolific indie author who writes long books and long series too, and she has such an established readership that I wanted to bring this interview back into circulation because it's full of really, really great advice, not only about launching a new series, but also like bringing an audience into an older one. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Susan, thanks for joining us on the Kobo Writing Life podcast. Been dying to have you on here, so I'm really happy that we finally get to chat.
Of course. I always appreciate being asked to do stuff. Sometimes I'm not sure that what I have to share is all that helpful and useful. But if somebody out there finds, something that I say that they can use, I guess it's all worth it. So
yeah, no, I think what you have to say is tremendously useful. Was that Inkers Con, which was 2 months ago? I mean, this year time means nothing.
Right.
But you did a couple of chats there, and I just thought that they were really, really helpful. And it's just kind of interesting because you write such long series that not everyone does. So yeah, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Good. Well, hopefully, as I said, something I say will trigger something in someone and help them out there in author land, because it's so hard to get traction and find readers and figure out what to do and what not to do. And everyone says, well, do this, it works, and do this, it works. And it doesn't necessarily. So I think you kind of have to pick and choose from lots of different things that you hear to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. So to get started, I actually don't think that I know this. So how did you get your start in writing? Were you always a writer, or how did you become this phenomenal indie?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know how that happened. It was magic. But no, so I've always been a pretty good writer. Like, writing comes pretty easily to me. And so my husband was in the military, and we were going around to all these army posts everywhere. And I've always been a huge reader. And so I actually emailed an author. This is terrible because nowadays you just don't do this. But I emailed an author and said, I really love your books, but there were a ton of typos in your books. I would love to proofread for you. Right. And that's like terrible. And anyway, so she said, sure, I run this online publishing company and you can help me. So I started proofreading. And then I started thinking, as I was reading the books, I was like, the stories I have on my computer are just as good as these. So why can't I publish? And so that kind of started it in 2014. And I published my first 3 books with this publishing company. And then I learned for 6 months, I studied Facebook and I paid attention to the authors I love. And I kind of saw what they were doing. And I said, I'm going to polish up this book that I've got half written. And it was a Seal Stories Protecting Caroline. And I put it out on my own as an indie author, and it did really well. And then I put the next one out, and that one did well. And then the next one, and that one did well. And so it just kind of snowballed. So yeah, I kind of fell into it accidentally. Like I never had the dream of becoming a writer and, I got to do this. I want to do this. It's kind of like I loved writing and I loved reading romance. That's all I ever read. So the two together just kind of worked. Magic.
That's awesome. That's a great start that you kind of went from being a reader and wanting to help the author that you love to realizing that, hey, I can do this.
Yeah. So my stories are just as good as this. I didn't think they were better, but I was like, they're just as good. So yeah.
That's amazing. When you wrote your first book, was that as a standalone? Because you write really long series, like some being up to 15 books. So I was wondering how you began going in that direction.
When I first wrote Protecting Caroline, 10, 15 years before I published it, it was a standalone. I've always liked men in uniform, and I was like, I'm going to write this Navy SEAL story because it's awesome. And so I fell into the Navy SEAL trope, but that was a good thing because Navy SEALs are sexy and all that. So that helped me. But when I was polishing it up and, because when I wrote just for fun, I wrote the fun scenes, like you write the drama. And you don't write the boring middle and all that stuff. So I had to go back and add all that. And as I did, it was, okay, well, I need an excuse for these 2 characters to be on a plane. So I'll create this character. And then they need to be on a plane with 2 other teammates. So I'll create these characters. And I didn't necessarily create them with a series in mind. But I quickly realized that, this will actually work. This can be the next story, and this can be the next story. And the character I wrote as a throwaway, the reason they were on the plane to go to Virginia, he still shows up in my stories today. So he's like the worst throwaway character I ever had because he became so vital. So yeah, he wasn't quite so throwaway-ish after all.
I like the idea of you just constantly trying to get rid of him. And you're like, this guy just keeps coming back into my books.
Well, it did. What happened was book 3 in that series. And let's call Tex and Tex will help us. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, all right, Tex is going to need a story because he's so important. He keeps popping up. I'm writing a book now. And I went into my reader group and I was like, you guys, Tex just butted his way into my story. I totally didn't expect him, but there he was. There's Tex. So yeah, he does. He keeps showing up because you always need a computer expert. You need someone who can use the computer and find the girl and find the data that you need to get the girl. And so, yeah.
You just wrote a character that was so integral. You're just like, he's just always there.
Right? I can't do without him now because, when you need someone to analyze the stoplight cameras, call Tex. He can do that. So, yeah.
Do you still write out of order?
No, I write in order. I'm pretty linear as far as that goes. So, but I'll get the ideas sometimes of, okay. And then I can throw those in the books as I write. So if I get an idea for a character, I might not write their story right away, but then I'll throw little Easter eggs into the series as I go, which is super important, which you need to do.
Well, I think this will lead into our next question. So I was looking through Goodreads and I was looking at the ratings of your books and they're all over 4 stars on Goodreads. And I was just wondering, how do you keep readers engaged for such long series?
When I start out a series, I sit down and I write all the names out. So if it's going to be a 6-book series or a 7-book series with 6 guys or 7 guys, I figure out all their first names. I figure out all their last names. I figure out all their nicknames, because that's super important for the military. And then I go through and figure out all the women's names. And so I know all that beforehand. So when I start writing book 1, I introduce the entire team in book 1. So that gets the readers invested. And I think that's really important. That doesn't mean characters won't pop in every now and then, or, I can write this novella, or the commander now needs a story or something like that. But as long as you have the core group of whether it's brothers or cousins or teammates or firemen or, whatever it is, your core group, once your readers get to know them, hopefully they're going to be interested in seeing their story along the way. I don't necessarily always know what those stories are. Like for my Seal of Protection Legacy series, I was in book 3 and the SEAL team went to Timor-Leste, to East Timor, to rescue a Peace Corps volunteer, because Peace Corps volunteers are government workers. And so the government sent in, because there was this big coup happening. So they went in to rescue the Peace Corps volunteer, and they got up to where her little village was, and they found out that it had been attacked. And instead of finding the Peace Corps volunteer, they found her friend who had just happened to be visiting her. And then they found this pit of bodies. I'm sorry, that might be TMI, but they pit of bodies, and the Peace Corps girl was on top. And so they're like, oh crap, she's dead. Let's take the friend and get out of here. Well, it was a little bit past that part in the story, and I said, wait a minute, what if that Peace Corps volunteer is not dead? And so because I knew the name of the girl in the last book, because I had already come up with the names of all the heroines, I changed the name of the Peace Corps volunteer. So I went back. I was like, I'll just make her name Kaylee. And so, if people are paying attention to my list of books, they're like, Kaylee, wait, that's the last book in the series. And then at the end of that book, book 3, she climbs out of the pit. And so everyone knows she's not dead. And so, whatever. So now the readers are like, in book 3, they find out the girl in book 6 is not dead and what's happening to her. And I didn't say what was happening to her, but it's that kind of hook that just keeps your readers invested and interested in what's going to happen. And, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's not dead. But I didn't plan for that. Again, the Peace Corps volunteer was just the reason for them to be there. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute. this might actually work. So you kind of have to be aware of the opportunities like that when you're writing a series. Like, where can you stick in people that might be interesting for the reader?
Can you stick them in after writing the whole book? I'm just wondering, do you usually know while you're writing that this is going to be an Easter egg here, or do you look back afterwards and add it?
No, I pretty much know. I'm not that good at going back and adding stuff, because once I write, I'm kind of like, done, throw it over my shoulder, move on to the next book. And so it's not fun for me to go back and nitpick and, where am I going to stick this? So yeah, it's kind of as I'm writing. I might do that. And I do other Easter eggs. And the thing with Easter eggs too is you don't want it to detract from the story. So if someone picks up book 3 in the middle of the series and reads it, because I try to make all of my books standalones. Each couple, you can read the book. But if people have read other books, they might catch stuff. So in one of my Delta Force Heroes books, the heroine is a video game designer. So her video games show up in a lot of my other books. Like if there's kids, they're playing the This Is War game and stuff. And so people were like, oh, wait, that's Harley's game, and I don't say anything like, oh, this is a girl from this other series. I just say it's that series. And so they all know, they're like, wait a minute, that's Harley's game. So it's things like that I think the readers like too. But yeah, when I write them, I'm pretty aware that I'm writing them, and I do so purposely.
I love stuff like that. As a reader, it's really satisfying. It feels like you've kind of found something that's like not so obviously been left for you, So you're like owning the story a bit.
Yeah, and I did that with one of my Montlake series. So Montlake is an Amazon publisher. And so obviously I can't really put in my other characters in their books, and I can't use their characters in my indie books, and that's fine. But at the end of one of the books, there was a baby was left at a fire station. And the firefighter that came out, his name was never used because the POV, the point of view that I'm in, they don't know who it is, but he's a Native American, and he picks up this baby. And anyone who's read my Badge of Honor series would know immediately, oh, that's Chief. They know that it's Station 7. They know it's Chief. They know exactly who it is. But if someone hasn't read that series, they're not going to feel like they're missing something. They're just going to be like, oh, it's a firefighter picking up a baby, But so everyone else is like, oh, wait, I know that character. So that sort of thing is fun. As I said, for the readers too, it makes everything feel connected, which I think is important when you write series, is you want everything to be connected, even if it's in just a little way.
So since you already know the future couples, how long does it usually take you to write a series, or I guess a book? Just depends.
Well, I have 3 series going at one time. Like by going, I mean being published. So I publish 2 or 3 books in each series a year. And so I'm not necessarily writing an entire series at once. I might write 2 books in one series and then have to write 2 books in another series and come back. But I can write a book depending on how easily that middle part comes, because the middle part is hard for me. I love the drama part, and the beginning is usually not so bad when they meet and stuff like that. It's that middle getting to know you that drags for me. But anyway, I can usually write a book in 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on how excited I am to be writing it and how each day goes. So yeah, I do forget the details sometimes, and my readers will call me on them, and I'm just like, sorry. Like, wait, didn't he have this kind of car in this other book, and now he's got a truck? I'm like, oh, he sold the Porsche. That's what happened.
Yeah, you're like, that's in the appendix somewhere, probably.
Right? Like, and I never want to say it's fiction. People go with it because, it's not necessarily the real people to them, and that's okay.
Do you have any practical tools that you use to help you plot, like to keep track of the characters?
I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantster. I generally know when I start a book how the characters meet and what the drama is at 85%. There's always a drama in my books. So it's a kidnapping or a shooting or someone gets knifed or something. So I know those 2 things. So that covers the beginning part. And then there's the middle where you're trying to get to the drama. You're sneaking in the clues about the bad guy and things like that. And then the drama happens. So while I said I know who the characters are, I don't necessarily know what their story is. Like, I don't know book 5 couple story while I'm writing book 1. So I kind of take each book as it comes. But as I said, sometimes things just come to me like the Kaylee, the poor Peace Corps volunteer. And I didn't know her story, but I knew obviously the SEAL was going to need to go back and find her and rescue her in some ways. But yeah, so I'm a pantster. But I found myself, and I learned this about myself because I was writing a book where they meet in Costa Rica, and there's a jungle rescue. So they're tromping through the jungle. I love a good jungle rescue. And I was just writing along, and they're going through the jungle, and she's being all like out of her element, but not whiny and crying about it. And he hates bugs, and she's a bug doctor and all this stuff. Anyway, I got to like 50,000 words. And I was like, I have no idea where I'm going with this. Like, I didn't know what the drama was. I had no idea. And I was like, oh my God, I'm at 50,000 words. So I had to like stop and go, okay, what is going to happen at 85% of this book? And once I did that, then I could continue. And it ended up being like my longest book ever because I had to get myself back around in the circle. So now I've learned, no, I have to know what that drama is at 85%, whether it's, a kidnapping or who the bad guy is. I have to know all that before I start so I can write to that drama. Otherwise, I'm just writing a fun journal. I don't know.
That's interesting that you could say that one book is so long. When you're writing a series, do you generally aim for them to be the same word count, or is it just where the story takes you?
It's really just where the story takes me, and I've gotten wordier as I've written more books. Like Protecting Caroline was 55,000 words. And my last book was like 105. And part of that is my books are a little insta-lovey. So, the guy meets the girl and he's like drawn to her and he knows something different about her. But I still like having that get to know you period. I don't necessarily like them jumping into bed and they're getting married and they're done. So that usually takes a while for me. And that's that middle part where they're getting to know each other and figuring things out and getting to know the people on the team and the other women on the team. And that can take a while, especially for once you get toward the end of the books into the series, because then you have to remember who's married, who's engaged. I always mess that up. If someone's pregnant, how many months has she been pregnant? My editor once was like, it's been 9.5 months. I'm like, oh crap. I guess she better have this baby in the beginning of the next book. So, you not only have to keep the couple in mind, but you have to keep all of the guys and their women that they've met. So they have to go to a bar, they have to bond, because that's a big part of my books too, is the women bonding as well as the men. So it gets complicated. So yeah, I found myself getting wordier. Pretty much I have a goal of like 75,000 words for every book, and it ends up being 85 to 95. So yeah, it just is what it is.
Wow, that is lengthy books to keep going at such a long series. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I don't either sometimes. And again, the readers will point out like, wait, I thought they were already engaged. And I'm like, oh crap, they probably were. Sorry. But I have an Excel spreadsheet. So it's very low tech. Some people use Scrivener and all these other tools to keep their plot and everything straight. I have an Excel spreadsheet. And I have like, here's their name, here's a nickname, here's their height, here's their hair color and eye color and their nicknames and what kind of car they have, because I always mess that up. What, do they live in an apartment? Where do they live? So I have like the basics on this. And then I do the same for the secondary characters. So for the bad guys and for the kids in a class. And so I try to keep all the names down there and all that basic stuff straight. But yeah, it doesn't always work. Like when I use the nickname Rex for a guy in 2 different series, I was like, sorry, I know that's confusing to my poor readers to have the same guy named Rex. But Rex means king in Latin. And so the one guy's last name was Kingston, and I'm like, well, he's Kingston. So that fixed. Anyway, yeah, but I mess those things up all the time. And people are like, well, didn't you already use this name? And I'm like, yeah, probably. Sorry. Readers are smart. They're way smarter than I am. When they've read the books 3, 4, 5 times, they'll come to me and be like, you screwed this up. I'm like, sorry.
Well, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you have a series that is published with Amazon Publishing, and that's kind of, you don't use characters from that series or integrate them. So has publishing wide allowed you to kind of have more fun with things, or just to be more open with how you're using the characters and things?
It has, because I can cross them over in series a lot easier. I don't have to be quite so concerned about who's going to want the rights to this book, and am I allowed to say this? Am I not allowed to say that? So yeah, so I can bring one of my Delta Force guys into my SEAL series. Maybe they were buddies or they came across each other. At the end of my first SEAL series, in one of the last books, their mission was to rescue a Army Reserve girl. And she ended up moving to Texas, or she's from Texas, and she's a firefighter. So she was in my firefighter series. But the Deltas also helped rescue her. So that had like a connection between all 3 series. So she knew the SEALs, she knew Tex. Of course, everyone knows Tex. And so she knew the Deltas, she knew the SEALs, and I could bring her up. She could pop into the Delta series. And so it's kind of nice that you can do all that. And it's also nice because I now have a fan fiction world. So all my authors can use all those characters as well, however they want to.
I didn't know fan fiction for romance. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I don't know why I say it like that, but that's kind of fun.
Because, I think some series lend themselves better to fan fiction than others. Romantic suspense is pretty I don't want to say easy, but I tell authors all the time, they're like, well, my guys aren't military. I'm like, doesn't matter. All they have to do, they went to high school with one of my guys, or they're at a football game and a terrorist bomb goes off. I mean, any kind of external drama, you can bring in the heroes to save the day, so to speak. So, yeah.
You mentioned rereading, and a lot of people think romance readers, they read really quickly, but do you find that they're rereading your series often?
They do. And especially like when I have book 5 is coming out in the series, a lot of my readers will be like, I'm going back to book 1 and rereading to prepare. And I'm thinking, oh no, what kind of errors, inconsistencies are they going to find? But yeah, I mean, so they find their characters that they love and they reread those books all the time, which is, I think rereading is probably the best compliment an author can have, because you can read a book once and be like, all right, I was entertained, that was good, and never think of it again. But for someone to like it enough to read it again and again, or even twice or 3, whatever it is, that's pretty cool, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. I love rereading a book that I really enjoy. And I've mentioned that to people I know, and they're just like, why are you reading? Like, did you not understand it the first time? You're like, no, I just really liked it and I wanted to be in it again.
Yeah. And I think there's some comfort in that. You know what's going to happen. You know what's coming. You might not necessarily have to concentrate as hard, so you can relax a little more when you're reading, I think, because you know what's coming up and what's going to happen.
And spot all your Easter eggs.
Yeah. And then, yeah, exactly. And then if you read it more than once, because I've had people say that, I didn't catch that the first time. So yeah, definitely.
I wanted to ask you, you just mentioned the fan fiction there. Have you ever read anything and just been like, damn, I wish I wrote that, like the story?
People ask me all the time, you write romantic suspense, contemporary. Would you ever write a shifter story, paranormal or something like that? And I read a lot of romance. That's all I ever read is romance, because I've grown up doing it. And I like the happily ever after, the emotional high I get at the end. And I read a lot of paranormal, but I don't think I could ever write it. Like, I'm so impressed by those authors. I've been reading the alien stories lately. I love me a good alien story. They're so good. But
which author?
Oh God, all of them.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I started Robin Lovett recently.
I haven't read that. Nina Carter's good. Ella Draven, I think is her name. Anyway, but they have to think of like new words for everything. Like a foot is no longer a foot. Like you have to make words up for everything. And I was like, I wouldn't be able to do that while I was writing. I just write and word vomit stuff out on paper. But if I just stop every now and go, oh, it's not an eyeball, it's a whatever it is, I don't think I could do it. So I'm so impressed by people that can make up these fantasy worlds and these alien worlds and paranormal stuff, because I could never do it. I wish I could, but I can't, and I wouldn't do it very well. So I got to stick to what I can do.
So let's pivot a little bit to talking about marketing for your series. In one of the talks that you did at Inkers Con, you mentioned that you only market the first 1 to 3 books in a series. Is that accurate?
It's probably not exactly accurate. When a new book comes out, I definitely, will pimp that book out and say, hey, here it is. It's a standalone, because I always, I want to write a book that people can pick up in the middle of the series, and then they can be interested and go back. But generally, as far as book clubs and some of the promotions, I really try to do the first book, because a lot of people don't want to go in the middle of the series. They're very particular. I've got to start with the first book, because otherwise I feel like I'm lost. So I market more heavily on the first couple books. It's a little different if you have a longer series. So my Badge of Honor series is 15 books long. And for me personally, that was a little long. I think for my readers, it just got a little long for me. I know there's some authors out there who can write 20, 25, 30 book series and their readers eat them up and they love it. But for me, I find 6 or 7 books is kind of my sweet spot. But Badge of Honor is 15. So I just had a book club for book 8, which is interesting. But it kind of what happened was I tried to get them to take book 1, which is perma-free, and they've done it several times and they rejected it. And book 2 is not my favorite, so I didn't want a book 2. And so then I tried book 3, they wouldn't take it. So then I got mad and I just kind of said, fine, book 8 then. And they were like, great, we want it, we'll take it. And I was like, oh, great. No. So, but because all the books stand alone, I think it worked out okay. Would it have been better if it had been first in the series? Maybe, maybe not. But it was a book that had never been on sale, so a lot of people picked it up. And hopefully they'll go on to read, whether they go backwards or forwards, they'll go on to read. But yeah, I mean, marketing the first book just makes sense, because that's where you introduce the team. That's where everyone gets to know them. And so it makes a lot of sense to concentrate on the first couple books in the series.
Given the length of this series, have you ever gone back into book one and like edited something or changed something, knowing that like all of your marketing, not all of it, but a lot of your marketing energy would be going on the beginning ones? Or is it just my book is written and edited and out and then that's it?
That's kind of how I feel about it. It's done. I've moved on. We're moving on. My editor would love to get her hands on some of my earlier books because I'm sure I did some head hopping and I'm sure my writing's gotten better since then. But the audio is whisper synced. So if I change the first book, then I break that and the audio will be more expensive. People might get confused because wait a minute, I already read it this way and now it's changed. So I'm kind of like, it's done. Now, if there's an error, obviously, I'm happy to go back and change it as long as I don't have to rewrite a whole chapter or something like that. But I generally have the thought that once a book is done, it's done. I'm moving on, moving up, moving forward, all of those things.
Yeah, I feel like once you kind of start doing that, it would be so easy to just constantly read your books. I know some authors get a lot out of that by redoing them, but yeah, it's kind of pulling a thread, right? When would it end?
And that takes time. And so do you go and concentrate on the old books or do you write new books and try to get the new books out? So I prefer to just keep moving forward. And I know my readers do too, because, it's one of those funny things where your book comes out that you've spent weeks and months on and the audio and you've edited and all these hours. And then like at 2 a.m. you get a message. They're like, I'm done. That was great. When's the next one? And you're like, can I just appreciate this one book being out for like more than 2 hours before you beg for the next one? But again, the way I feel about it, they want the next one. So that's a win. They could not care or, say that sucked and I don't ever want to read anything again. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt. Like I'm okay with them wanting more, but at the same time, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they want it so much they're not even letting you sleep that first night. That's
right.
Good and bad.
Gotta wait for it to come out, and then they're messaging going, that was amazing, or whatever. So yeah. Or there's a typo on page 78, and you're like, oh, dang. One of the things I think that's really important when you're writing series is to have that hook to the next book, to make the reader crave that book more than anything else. And that it's more than just sticking the hero in and having to have a conversation in the last paragraph of the book. If I read a book and can't remember the names, or if I don't immediately know whose book is next, I think the author has failed to do their job in that. So whether it's just something at the end or whether you've thrown in snippets along the way, you need to make the reader crave that next book and be emailing you at 2 a.m. When's it coming out? I got to read it. Because if you just finish it and have a short little glimpse into their next book, if the reader doesn't really remember it or it hasn't struck something in them, then it's going to be harder to get them to continue on with the series. So having that hook is super important and something that I've learned as I've gone over the months, years, whatever, to really make that hook more and more intense, I guess is the word, like with the girl climbing out of the pit of bodies at the end.
I guess that kind of leads into, it could be the same answer, but it's what do you think has been the best thing you've done for your writing career or maybe your writing business?
Those first 3 books that I published, they were contemporary and they were about reality shows. So I don't know if you ever saw Outback Jack. God, I don't know how many years ago.
No, but I would watch that.
What is that about?
They're fiends for reality shows.
You got to look it up. I mean, it's at least probably 22 years old now.
I'm making a note.
Outback Jack. And they sent like these 16 pampered society women to the Outback and to meet Jack. And he's like this rugged, good looking guy. And they're making him like camp in these like horrible, back in your YMCA camping days. And they're making them do all these things where, their makeup gets ruined and stuff. Anyway, it's totally cheesy. But back in the day, I was like, what if someone got on that show that wasn't like the pampered little girl? And so that was what my first book was about. This girl was on the show in Australia, in the Outback, and she was like accidentally picked, like she had the same name as someone else, and they picked the wrong person. So she's like your average Joe, average Jane, and all these other girls are like, ew, a bug, anyway. But what I learned was those books were contemporary, strict contemporary. And they got lost really fast in the sea of all the other contemporary books. And now there's even more contemporary books out in the world. And so the Navy SEAL thing, I didn't really plan it, but that worked for me. Like that was the best thing I could have done because it was a niche and it was Navy SEALs and people would search for Navy SEAL and my book would come up. And so that really helped me back in the day. And so that and the series and writing the series where I got to know these other guys. And I think you find something you love to write. I think so many times now people are writing something because they think they're trying to write to market. They think it's what everyone's reading, and they're constantly chasing the tropes and the enemies to lovers and brother's best friend. And I'm going to write this because so-and-so wrote this and did really well. I just think that's hard, and why a lot of authors struggle to find what they love to write, because they're trying to write everything that is working right now.
That's great. And it sort of leads into the next question that we had, was about whether or not you had advice for authors to maintain a long-term writing career. So like, I guess with keeping a series, like how do you kind of keep the momentum going and keep seeing this as a career?
Well, I mean, for me, because I write what I like to write. If I sat down every day and was like, oh God, I got to write another book today, or what am I going to write? This is awful. I hate this. Then that gets really hard. So I think you find what you really love to write, and that makes it easier to actually do the writing part. And then I think you need to be consistent. And I know there's so many people out there who are like, oh, I'm bored with this. I want to write something new. But I think one of the reasons why I'm super successful is because readers know exactly what they're going to get when they pick up one of my books. They know it's going to be an alpha type hero. They know something bad's going to happen about 85% of the book. The heroine's going to need to be rescued. And sometimes she does her own rescuing and the guys just kind of show up to kill the bad guys at the end. But in some way, it's the damsel in distress trope. And so people know that that's what they're going to get. I'm not switching into doing dragons and then going back to contemporary and then doing some angsty new adult. And so I'm very consistent with what I write. And again, that's easier because I like what I write. I'm not bored with it. So that definitely helps too. But yeah, I think because there's so many authors out there, I think a lot of readers have figured out these are my favorite authors. And so they'll get their books. But then once one of those authors deviates, and they write something that maybe the author or the reader doesn't care for, they'll go in the bottom of their list again. And then they'll have these other 20 authors that they're going to buy everything they write until something happens and they move them on. So I think being consistent is super helpful as far as the reader's concerned. And it helps them know, okay, when Susan Stoker puts out a book, this is what I know what I'm going to get, whether it's a new series, an old series, or anything in between.
And your branding is very distinct. Like you can tell a book is yours by looking at it. So I think that probably also plays into giving the readers exactly what they want.
It does. I lucked out when I first started. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm writing this reality show book. It's great. I got this Navy SEAL thing. I don't know what I'm doing. But I went to a friend who's not in the business. He's a graphic designer, but he's not in the romance world at all. And I said, hey, Chris, I need a cover. And he's like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. Put a guy, do this. And he's like, wait, we need to pretend like you were going to make $1 gazillion doing this. And that's how we need to start. And so he was so instrumental because he started out my branding with the ace and the fonts. And here's where we're going to put it on your covers. And so, he still designs my covers today. And every now and then we'll fight. And he'll be like, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like, well, I've been reading romance for 40. Shut up, do what I tell you. And so anyway. But yeah, I owe a lot of that to him because he kind of started me out saying, we got to brand these, we got to do it all the same. Let's put your ace on everything and do all of that. So I lucked out with him, definitely.
Does he do other people's covers?
He doesn't, because he's not in the biz. Like he does a lot of graphic work. He does like graphic work for beer companies up in Pennsylvania, and he designs coins, challenge coins for people and things like that. But yeah, I'm his only romance author. So I'm always like, Chris, you want me to send you some of the books? And he's like, no, that's all right. I'm good. Thanks. I'm like, doesn't your wife want them? So yeah.
So your books are available in a number of languages. So we're just wondering if you had any tips on translations.
Oh, translations. Translations are hard. So here's the thing. Sometimes I feel like I'm the most successful author nobody's ever heard of. Because, I've been denied by several agents because they say nobody overseas wants to read military books. And so I can't represent you. And so they'll say, well, nobody wants to read that, or romantic suspense is not the hot thing. So whatever. So I've been turned down a lot. So that makes me even more determined to be like, I'll show you. Yeah. So I found German, French, and Italian is what I'm translating right now. And those seem to be the most popular languages to translate into at this point. And so I'm doing them all myself. I'm paying for them myself because fine, if no publishers want my stuff, I don't want them. So anyway, but I think I have 45 books out in other languages now, which is crazy. But again, the series thing is important, even overseas. So once you start translating a series, you need to keep going. Because I think what happens is a publisher will buy book 1 from an author and maybe book 2, but then sales might be down and they'll be like, well, we don't want any more. And then the poor French people or German people or Italian people are left going, well, what about the rest of these books? You got me interested in these characters. I want more. And so I think with the translations, it's important to keep, if you're going to start, pick a series that maybe isn't 20 books long, pick a shorter series and finish it and see how those does. Facebook ads are important. Again, getting the word out is just as hard in other countries as it is in America, I think. But find a good company. Don't go to Fiverr and pick the first person that uses Google Play or Google Translate and plugs your book in. It can cost money, but like anything, you want a good product with editing and with graphics. If you try to cut rate it, then that's what you'll get, a cut rate product. So you don't want that.
And does your friend do your translation covers too? Are they the same or have you sort of adapted to the geos?
He does do them, but we decided for foreign, I would not go with Naked Man Chest because just to see if it was different. So then I had to go back. And of course I went to my readers and was like, if I was going to put an object on a cover, what would it be for this series? And so that was hard to think of what can you put on a cover that's very simple that will represent the story in some way. But so we brainstormed about that and looked at other foreign covers and what do we want to do? And will I always keep the object covers? I don't know. I might go to Manchester at some point, but it's hard to know what works and what doesn't work. Because even when you go overseas and you look at the top 100, it's all over the board as to, whether it's Naked Manchester or covers or anime or whatever it is. So you just kind of got to experiment and see what works. And but a couple of my books in France have hit number 1 in the entire French store. So I just want to say haha to all those publishers out there Susan who. So
that's awesome. Congrats on those French books.
Thanks.
That's wicked.
Now granted, the French, you don't need as many. You don't have to sell as many to hit number 1 in France as you do in the US, but still I was still pretty pleased that they did so well, that they're doing so well.
No, that's awesome. And so when you do your translations as well, do you get your marketing material while you're translating the books, or is that a separate process?
What do you mean?
Just to kind of like you were saying, Facebook ads, or sort of like just to have the text in another language, hey, my new book's out.
Yeah, I'll ask my translator. I'll be like, hey, can you translate this for me? I'm going to do an ad. And so, because you don't want to use Google Translate for that either. I mean, I use Google Translate when I'm when I'm responding to comments, because obviously I'm not going to bother my translator every time I want to know what's being said or what I should say back. But I figured that's okay. But when you have an ad, my translator will give me that. And they're usually real short sentences. And I have taglines in the back of the paperbacks that I've asked them to translate and, sent those off to my graphic designer and things like that too. And I sell a good amount of paperbacks in France, especially. So, I've been surprised at how many paperbacks. So I'm obviously that's probably a cultural thing or, whatever, but I'm pleased at that, sell as many paperbacks as I can. So.
Nice. It's great to hear that your books are selling so well over there, because it's disheartening to always hear people say like this type of genre won't work in Europe or this won't do this. Like, right. Yeah. I think readers
don't dismiss an entire genre of military. And I get it. I get that people from other countries don't like the American centered stuff all the time. But, when I write my books, I try not, a lot of them are not super heavy as far as let's describe every piece of the person's uniform. And I'll say he's holding a gun. I'm not going to say what kind of gun it is because I'll be wrong and someone will tell me I'm wrong. So, I just say they're holding a gun. And I think that helps as far as the getting people from other countries and cultures and stuff to buy into the story, that I don't get bogged down in all the American details about all of that too. So
I feel like people are also interested in other cultures, which is like American Army, Navy, SEALs, all that stuff. So I don't know.
It's a hot man in uniform. Doesn't matter if he's American or French or German or Italian or what he is. As long as he's hot, it's all good.
I'm trying trying to formulate this question. I was thinking about it, but you kind of you mentioned the romance books have certain beats that they have to hit or else it's not a romance. Do you find that you break them, these beats, or you try to include them? Or what's your thoughts on romance writers breaking away from this expected plot points of a romance?
I think that's okay as long as it ends up with a happily ever after. I mean, that's the main thing with a romance is they have to end up together in the end, whether that's a happy for now, whether that's a happy forever, whatever it is. I wrote a short story about Wolf and Caroline, and they're the couple in my very first book, Protecting Caroline. And I got hate mail. People told me they regretted reading it and that they hated it. And I still get that because I wrote Wolf and Caroline when they were 85 years old and Caroline has Alzheimer's. But to me, it was the ultimate love story because Wolf was still protecting her. He was there. He, made sure that even though she didn't remember him, he remembered her, and he was making sure she ate and making sure she did all this stuff. And she actually died at the end of the book, but she was 85 years old. I mean, she wasn't 40. And but people just were so devastated that I killed her. And and I'm but so even though it was a love story in my mind, I broke the tenets of the romance is don't kill off dogs. Don't kill off children, and don't kill off a main couple, a main character. And I've seen authors do that, whether it's a motorcycle club book or whatever. And in book 5, they kill off the hero that was the subject of book 2. And readers hate that. They revolt. They will not read any more of that person's story. So I think as long as a romance, you can do anything you want along the way, as long as they end up together. Otherwise, it's not a romance. It's a women's fiction. It's a general fiction. It's whatever it is. But I don't think it's romance.
Well, you did your job because you wanted people to care about the couple. And
right. But I mean, it was crazy because I was she doesn't remember him, but he's still protecting her and still there by her side. And I'm who wouldn't want someone if that happened to you, wouldn't we all want that? And so, so that was where I was coming from. But apparently other people didn't like that. But it's still the most controversial. It's 10,000 words. It's not a super long thing, but it's still the most controversial book ever. And people are I loved it and I hated it. And I'm just okay. So I learned my lesson though. Never again. Never kill anyone off, no matter how old they get. They're going to be 150 and they're still doing push-ups and running along the beach with their seal friends. I don't know.
That's how you broach into a more experimental genre.
Right. So we go into cyborgs and
exactly.
The paranormal. Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Oh, that's exciting. So I wanted to we just have a couple of last questions to wrap up. This has been terrific. I feel like we could chat all day.
I know, right?
What's your favorite thing about being an indie author?
Sitting on my couch, no bra, with my pajamas on, next to my dogs.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing about quarantine.
Yeah, that's all of us right now.
Right. But I mean, honestly, I like that I can write what I want to write. If I want to do an ad tomorrow, I can do an ad. I don't have to get anyone's permission. If I want to do something new with marketing, I can try it out. I can try out a lot of things. And you can't do that with traditional publishing. It's kind of I'm my own dictatorship, where they're all bureaucracies. You have to go through layers and layers of stuff to get permission to do anything. Where me, I can just decide one day, hey, I'm going to do this today. And I can do a giveaway if I want or any of that. So I'm kind of in control of all of it, which is also a scary thing because I could always screw it all up. But it's nice to be able to have the flexibility to do whatever I want, really.
So we usually ask people what they're loving lately, but I am going to change it for you. And I'm wondering, which books do you reread a lot?
Oh, gosh. It's funny. I have 300 in my reread folder out of the 6,000 that I've read, So when I tell someone you're in my reread folder, it means something. But gosh, I'd have to look. I got a lot of BDSM in there, and I don't know why. I think it's that super alpha guy that there's just something about. I mean, I write alpha characters, but they don't necessarily cross that line into BDSM. So I've got a lot of Cherie Sinclair. I got some Kristen Ashley because she's the queen of alpha males. Nina Carter, as I said, she's got an Alien series. A new book just came out today, so I've got that to read. And it's funny though, because I've become more picky as I've become a writer too. it's harder for me to find a series that I love because I'm always looking for books like mine, which I think is why I became a writer, because I was like, well, I can write all these stories in my head instead of looking for them all the time.
Yeah, it's like full circle there. Like you started writing because you were finding faults with books and you're still doing it. Yeah.
I know. Well, when I was little, I would watch Wonder Woman, like, the Linda Carter version, the real Wonder Woman. And I would go out in the backyard and spin in circles and pretend I was Wonder Woman. And then I'd pretend Wonder Woman was rescuing me. And so the rescue thing has like been a part of my psyche for a really long time. So if I can find a good jungle rescue or alien rescue or whatever it is, I'm in.
And then what can readers expect from you next?
So the last book in my Seal of Protection Legacy series is coming out in September. That is the one with Kaylee. Poor Kaylee finally gets rescued. Yeah, she climbed out of the pit of bodies. And so she's been waiting a while. In December, I have a new series starting, and the next Silverstone, it's with the Amazon publisher. It's about 4 guys who quit the military and now go around killing people, but they only kill really bad people, so it's okay. And then next year in April, I start my Hawaii SEAL Team series. Yeah, so there's nothing like a good SEAL team in Hawaii. So so the first book is written, and I watched Under Siege, because it starts out, she's on a cargo ship. So
I love that film so much.
Right? I know, it's so cheesy, but
good.
It's so good. Yeah, so I had to watch that for research. So she starts out on a cargo ship in the Middle East and pirates take over. So of course the SEALs have to come and rescue everybody on board. So yes, I'm pretty excited about starting that. And then my Delta Team 2, I forget about Delta Team 2. Book 2 comes out in August. But I've just finished writing book 6. So I finished writing all the books, but we're only on book 2 being published. So hopefully readers will get sucked into that team too, and we'll have to get all their stories. So lots of books coming. I've planned out my writing schedule out to 2028.
What? Holy!
I know, right? Because I'm like, all right, well, here's the 7 guys. And so they need their series. And then this new series, here's 7 guys. So they all need. So yeah, it's pretty insane.
I'm just like, what am I going to be doing in 2020? Who knows?
I know. Hopefully I'll still be around writing in 2028. We'll see.
Oh, man. And then where can listeners find you online?
StokerAces.com is my website. And so that's probably the best way. But if you just put in my name in Facebook, if you're a Facebook user, Susan Stoker, you'll see I have a reader group in my profile page and my like page, and all that stuff will show up. Yeah, all my books are on StokerAces.com. And there's a funny story behind that. In the 70s, remember the show Stroker Ace? No, because you guys are too young. But anyway,
I'm blaming the fact that I'm from Ireland.
There you go. Anyway, there's a show called Stroker Ace. And so there was a guy at work who always made fun of me. Stroker. And so, yeah, Stroker Ace. So that kind of became my thing. I don't know. It's cheesy, but yeah. So Stoker Ace. StokerAces.com.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo ReWriting Life podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're not already, you should follow us on socials. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, and our meme game is pretty solid. This episode was hosted by Stephanie McGrath and Tara Kremen, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham, and our theme music is composed by Tearjerker. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing!